So it's been a while since I posted a video. It's not because I haven't tried posting videos, it's just for some reason YouTube won't let me upload videos anymore. So we're just going to hope and pray that these videos post. So this video is going to be a multiple part series of videos of working on this railing project. I'm sad to say it's taken me 10 months to do it, but I've had a really good understanding with the customer, and she knows that I teach blacksmithing classes, I do demonstrations, I do vendor shows too, and working on these railings ain't the top priority, or at least weren't the top priority thing as of late last year, especially during the winter. Winter in Iowa is colder than hell, and there's some days that it would take me, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours longer to do something that would usually just take me a half hour just because the temps outside. But this project has taken me a long time to do them, and one of the biggest things that I want to kind of promote to people is when you're doing work like this. Now, you can see my shop. My shop is not the biggest and the best shop in the world or anything like that. But you see a lot of guys working out of these big, fancy fabrication blacksmith shops or whatever the hell you want to call them. They're big blacksmith shops that have a lot of fabrication stuff. And one of the biggest things with what the customer and I decided is, so my customer lives in a house that was built around 1880, and she's been putting a lot of effort and a lot of work into the house to kind of bring it back to its former glory, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And she's had new siding, new roof, new everything put on the house, and she wanted a set of railings that's not something that's the exact same to the houses around her. So we kind of came up with the idea of using kind of similar styles to what they would have used around 1880, along with techniques and even as far as tooling. So for these railings, there's a lot of forging in it. Right now, we're at the finished total amount of hours that I have into it is probably closer to 780 hours in the stair railings and in the porch railings, and then she wanted a matching mailbox post and mailbox to go with them, so I've been working on those, which you won't see in this video. Those will probably start popping up around the second, probably third or fourth video, as long as this posts, I hope. But we decided that, you can go out in the world today and buy a fabricated railing, and there's a lot of fabricated railings the guys can build that look nice, but you're not going to go to too many places and find a railing that is made like these are. These are pretty much traditional joinery. The only thing I cheated on that I originally was planning on doing was I was going to punch and drift the holes. But after I sat here and thought about it, at the beginning of this video, or at least in this video, you'll see my old post drill I used to use that used to have a washing machine motor on it. Well, at one point during this project, the motor burned up, and I ended up just trading it to my buddy. I had a hand crank post drill, so I started using that on most of this project. But after we started finishing up the shop expansion, I have a Camelback drill press that actually has a Model T transmission mounted on the top, which is kind of neat. So I started using just old drills, and they're over 100 years old. They're not... The post drill is hand crank post drill. That one's period correct to the age of the house and everything. But the Camelback, not really. Well, I've honestly never looked up the age of the Camelback. I've always assumed it was made around 1900 or something like that, which is close enough in my opinion. But, no. So one of the biggest things, too, I want to kind of talk about is, I said it's taken me about 10 months to get these railings and everything done, which is something I'm kind of ashamed of saying, but at the same time, the level of work that has gone into these railings, it's not, like I said, a fabrication shop doing it. It's truly works of art, which when I first got into blacksmithing and even when I was a kid and everything, I was into history, but I wasn't into art. I just always thought art was paintings and just junk like that. And as I've progressed in my business, I've learned more about art. And there's different types of works of art that's actually helped me kind of see different ideas and things that I can do within my business, but along not just my business, just in my ironwork, period. But one of the biggest things that I've been trying to push myself, I probably won't be able to start doing it until next year or something like that, but one of my biggest goals is when I do get a railing order or something big like this, is instead of spacing out classes or demonstrations or vendor shows that, okay, well, I'm going to work on the railings for a week, but I got to take a week off so I can make something for the vendor show. One of the biggest things that I'm really going to start pushing is kind of cut back on teaching classes, doing demonstrations, and going to shows and everything, because they take up a lot of time. Yes, vendor shows and things like that help me get my business out there, but a lot of them, for the most part, are hit or miss. You know, everyone asks me, hey, Corey, do you want to go to a casino with us and go gamble? Well, I don't gamble for the simple fact, any time that I go to one of these vendor shows, it's a gamble whether I'm going to make my payment back. So, yeah, some of these shows you'll pay $25 to go to. The most I've paid for one was about $200, and all I really made back was $60. So, I don't really gamble on that. But, no. These railings have been a fun project. This customer that I have, she's really patient, and which was really nice. It was a big plus. She understood that I had classes to teach and things like that, and it's been a fun project all around. It's kind of pushed me to see where I can actually go with my business. You know, I've been doing ironwork for a long time. I've been blacksmithing for about 13, probably closer to 14 years now. Honestly, I've lost count. I started when I was 11. I'm damn near 25 now. So probably, yeah, about 14 years or so. And just doing projects like this just makes me happy. I like bringing just traditional techniques, whether it's forge welding like what you're seeing now, or, you know, just traditional joinery, tenons and things like that, and collars. I love bringing it out and showing people that, hey, this is how things used to be made. This is how things were made when they were made to last. And that's kind of a thing that we don't really have that much anymore in today's society, as everything's throwaway society, basically. And that's something that I really, when I sell my work, especially on things like these railings, I have a paper I sign off on, and I give it to every customer that it's anything I build like this is a lifetime warranty. That, you know, if something happens to it, give me a call, I'll show up, I can fix it. If I can't fix it on site, I'll just take it back to my shop and fix it for you. And, you know, there's not a lot of things like with Amazon and places like that, oh, we'll sell you this cheap piece of junk for $10, but if it breaks, you're just going to have to buy another one. And that's something that, as a kind of a world that we've kind of just let happen. And, you know, people complain about handmade stuff being too much money. Well, you're not paying for junk, you're paying for quality. And I will say there is a lot of handmade stuff that you can buy out there that is junk. And I really don't like saying that, but it's true. And, you know, someone might watch my video and be like, oh, this guy's railings look like shit. And, you know, you can be true, depending on how good of a job you do. There's blacksmiths all around the U.S. and all over the world that do 100% better job than I do. But most of these guys that are doing the great job and everything have had mentors, they've had teachers, they've gone to college and things like this for it. I'm self-taught 100%. Everything that I've ever learned was just for me just kind of sitting and figuring things out. And, you know, I'm going to try that today. So, yeah. Also, another thing you might notice, now, if you're looking at the smithing magician and you see that I'm using more of a fuller rather than a butcher, the only reason that I was using a fuller over the butcher is, if you can tell in the videos, kind of at the time when I first started working on these, my shop was just a shithole. It was a mess, and it was horrible. And between adding on to the shop and just projects all going on at the same time, my shop just kind of turned into kind of a shithole. And I kind of lost my butcher dies for a while, up until I cleaned the shop about a month or two ago. and I found them again, so I was able to start using those for finishing up the tenons and the spindles and the tenons for the braces that I had left over for the porch posts, or the braces for the porch railings. But for a lot of this video, I think I'm just gonna shut up, and I've kind of said my piece, and I'll let you watch it for the next 7 minutes or so. And you know, I might jump back on and talk a little more about the process, but here's me using the crank post drill that I was talking about earlier. But another thing you might notice too is you might be wondering why this old post drill has just this bright white handle on it. So I had to forge this handle, and after running into the handle about 3 or 4 different times, I finally decided I need to paint it a somewhat bright color just to stop hitting my head running head first into it. So that's the reason it has a bright handle color on it, or a bright colored handle on it. Another thing I will say too is when I was talking about how I was trying to use older tools, you see me welding here using my welder on the truck. You know, yes, for a lot of this I could do drop tongue weld or something like that, or wire it together, but you know, sometimes, and this is just from my experience, if I need to do something quickly and I need a piece to actually sit in this exact spot that I need it, wire, sometimes you'll get it, well, you're trying to get it up to a welding heat, wire is going to burn off, or it's going to shift or something like that, and you always have that chance of screwing something up. So, you know, on things like this, the tacks I was able to forge out, if the ones I wasn't able to forge out, I ground out. And, you know, if someone wants to bitch about it, go ahead and bitch, but, you know, sometimes modern tools do help you a lot in this line of work. You know, like I said, that I'm trying to use traditional tooling and things like that for this railing, but at the same time, the way I see it, if these guys 150 years ago would have had a welder, they would have used it. And that's my argument. Yeah, someone's going to say, well, it's not traditional. Well, that's probably true, but when I want things like these scrolls to go together in an exact perfect way, yeah, I could put a little rivet in there that would hold it, but that would just take more time, and it's not a guaranteed if it's going to weld worth shit or not, versus I can tack these together. It'll take like 10 seconds to tack them together and throw them in the forge weld them, and not have to worry about it. Also, I can see someone complaining about me tapping my anvil, and you know, you see a lot of guys tapping anvils, and they're doing it just to be obnoxious, to sound cool, and things like that. Usually, if I'm doing it for two reasons. One, I'm trying to see what the hell I'm doing. I'm tapping it so I can just see it for the split second. Or the other reason that I'm doing it is to adjust my grip. And that's a good way of adjusting your grip. Drop it on the anvil while it's still in your hand loosely, and then readjust. And really, that's the only reason half the time I tap my hammer on the anvil. I'm not sitting here trying to be obnoxious, trying to sound cool for a crowd or anything. Granted, some crowds like it at my demonstrations and things like that, but you know, I don't do it to be obnoxious. I don't do it just to be for the cool factor of it. I do it for a specific reason.